Hello, everyone. Good morning to you all. I hope everyone is having a wonderful Saturday. And I hope everyone is in good health. I hope everyone's thinking positive. Hey, even if something's going bad, just put it in God's hands. He's going to make it better for you. I promise you he will. Now, today I want to talk to you all about why the Uber and Lyft riders don't support the Uber and Lyft drivers in the protests and the striking efforts for more pay and better working conditions. Okay? You people need to listen in on this. My new and future drivers on the Lyft platform, please pay attention to this. To all the people that have subscribed to my channel because they're interested in the information that I'm putting out there, please listen to this. To all you riders that utilize Lyft and Uber to get around as a form of transportation, please listen to what I'm saying and try to understand what I'm saying. Okay. These companies, these rideshare companies, Lyft and Uber, like I said, these are computer algorithms. These are sophisticated computers that were built by IT experts somewhere in the world. Somewhere in the world, okay? It was one purpose behind building these, and that was to print money 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in just about every corner of the world that they could. And they succeeded. Okay? Now, these people, these platforms, when they built these platforms, they knew that they had to figure out a way. They had to figure out a way to make these systems be in high demand. And they knew that all over America, that the price of transportation was really at an all-time high. That's the price of not having a vehicle. Now, okay, so when you look at these business models, these are computer algorithms. We know that computers are cold-hearted. They don't have no feelings at all. No human interaction at all. They don't care about a human. We are millions of drivers that's being controlled by these computer algorithms on these driving platforms. Okay? Now, these riders will not support the drivers in their striking and protesting efforts to be treated fairly and paid fairly, because if there's any changes in that department where the drivers are being treated more fair, pay-wise, the prices is going to go up on the trips. The sole purpose that everybody ran to these platforms to start riding was because these platforms offered 3 times cheaper fares than the transit systems, taxi services, and things of that nature. The reason is that these people want cheap rides. And it's about anything that they can get extra from that rideshare service for that cheaper fare. Okay? They don't care at all about the driver. When you go to pick an individual up as a driver, when those people get in that car, those people want to get to where they need to go for as cheap as possible, right? And they want to try to utilize all of the options that go along with that cheap fare. And they don't even realize that they're putting a lot of stress on the driver, a lot of hardship on the driver. who's only going to get a small percentage of what they pay the rideshare companies. Okay? So the number one reason that the riders don't support the Lyft and Uber drivers that's protesting in different states around the world is because they're more concerned about the cheaper fares. Now, what that has done, that has put us against one another as foes, right? And what I mean by that is you have the riders that's looking for cheaper fares. They already get cheaper fares 75% of the time from these platforms. 75 to 80% of the time they get cheaper fare from these platforms. The other 20 to 25%, they catch them in some type of surge or some type of driver shortage. And the fares go up almost 3 times what they normally pay on a daily basis. So if a driver is normally catching a ride to work, if a rider is normally catching a ride to work every day for $14, okay, on one day, they might can't get a ride, and that ride is $50. And then they'll get off the app and try to wait for it to go down. When they get back on, then it's $36, so they got to take it, or they're going to be late to work. So you get cheaper fares. You Lyft and Uber drivers will get cheaper fares 75 to 80% of the time. Okay? That's a huge margin to be benefiting. And I get it. Y'all don't care. Hey, it's a service that was created, and y'all gonna pay your money to get from point A to point B. You don't care about nothing else as long as you get from point A to point B. That driver that picked you up, you don't care about him or her. You don't. You care about getting from point A to point B. Okay? The driver, in your mind, is being compensated as well. But to you, you don't care. Right? That's why at least across the board, 70% of y'all don't tip the drivers. You know who I'm talking about. At least 70% of y'all, we're talking about worldwide, at least 70% of riders do not tip the drivers. And this is why. Because the reason for you utilizing these rideshare companies, Lyft and Uber, is because of the cheaper fares. You're trying to get somewhere for as little of money as you can. You riders don't understand that you're hurting the drivers. Now, you have these drivers in just about, I don't know how many states around the world that's protesting. About thousands. Maybe even now about 100,000. Right? Lyft and Uber drivers. All saying the same thing. All being mistreated. All being unfairly compensated daily. Unfair pay. They're all saying the same thing. And I have yet to see. Now, okay, so a lot of these strikes and protests with these drivers, they barely get news coverage. They barely get news coverage. They barely get, every now and then you'll see something on the internet. Every now and then, depending on what the commotion is, you might see the news report something coming out of a certain place. Like it might be the drivers are striking at the airport. Like within a week and a half ago, out in Denver, the drivers striked out at the airport, and they put that on the news, and I was shocked. But that wasn't on. It didn't hit the national news. It was on the internet. If it did hit the national news, it didn't hit it in the area that I live in. Okay? But when it hits the national news, that means that it's all over the place. It's going to be seen on CNN and NBC and ABC, all of it, and it's going to be played several times a day. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. Okay, and I'll get back to that later. But the striking and protesting efforts by the drivers for Lyft and Uber is not going to get customer support. Not a great big percentage of customers are not going to support it anyway. It might be some, but for the most part, it's going to be very low. And that's because they probably have loved ones that's driving. You know what I'm saying? But when it comes down to these business models have pitted us against one another. As the rider who receives a cheaper fare 75 to 80% of the time, then you have the driver who's out here struggling to make money on a daily basis because the Lyft and Uber platforms takes so much of the money from the drivers, which leaves them with little percentages of money, all because of these cheaper fares. They had to make these computer algorithms work, and the only way they could make these work was offer these drivers 3 times cheaper fares 75 to 80% of the time that they're utilizing these services. This demand has created a major demand in the world from corner to corner. So you got a bunch of riders that depend on Lyft and Uber. You got a bunch of drivers that have nothing else going on, or have some going on and need some income supplemented and have to come out here and drive. So they've created a two-headed monster. Both of them are demand that makes them millions of dollars, while the driver who does all of the heavy lifting gets mere crumbs and get mistreated tremendously bad by the platforms. As well as, you have to deal with the everyday customer base. Your character being chastised and ridiculed, being falsely accused, false accusations to get your account put in block, getting unfair reviews due to vindictive riders that don't know how to follow rules. They would do all types of things to sabotage the driver. And these platforms enforce these things against the drivers because their only concern is the customer that's paying. The driver that's driving, we can get more drivers. That's why they give new drivers a link and say, hey, if you know someone that wants to drive, give them your link and tell them to sign up. You'll get an $800 referral bonus. Only if that person completes a certain number of rides attached to that promotion that they're going to sign up through your link. So as long as drivers keep pushing their links, they're going to keep getting more and more and more customers, more and more drivers to add to their platform so that they can continue to mistreat the drivers that's been there. Throw them away. You know what I'm saying? Just, hey, look, he's off the platform. We don't need him anymore. We'll hit him somebody new. You know what I'm saying? We'll turn this one into a full-time driver once he needs something, once he needs to make some money. We'll turn him into a full-time driver. You know what I'm saying? I mean, stuff like that. The drivers and the riders shouldn't be pitted against one another based on a business model. This is pure manipulation of society, exploitation of societies around. And I'm so appalled that the government, the national government, allowed these people to create these businesses with these computer algorithms that is manipulating humans the way that they are. Now the riders are not getting manipulated. It's the drivers that's getting manipulated, misused,